All right. My apologies for jumping on at 7:32 instead of at 7:30. I totally apologize. I was actually sitting up watching. First, I have a pastor here in town, but I was watching a church online that is that I think is very outstanding. And I want to encourage you, those who follow me, to check this church out too, which is Andy Stanley, who was the son of Dr. Charles Stanley. And he is actually doing a series right now that's called The Bible Told Me So. And it's really funny because I feel like the series that he's doing that's entitled, The Bible Told Me So, aligns with the series that we've been doing at Peace Church, which is called College Students That Follow Jesus Christ. So first, let me introduce myself. I am Dr. Thomas Richard Easley. I have been a minute since I've been on. So first, I want to say greetings, in particular to two of my normal friends, Ms. Sanders, Dr. Juice. It's good to see you all online. And what's been happening with me recently? One, I had gotten sick, and so that's like I'm still getting my voice back to 100%, but I had lost my voice actually for a little bit. And when you lose your voice, and if you're like me, unlike most people, I lose my voice. So, and mostly what I do deals with me using my voice, especially work and traveling and speaking and stuff. So when I couldn't use my voice, it couldn't work. And unlike, I think, some people out that would be mad at that, I was actually happy I was forced to basically be quiet, I guess, So I'm feeling really good, feeling great. We're going to have a good church today. But today, I want to also invite you that, being that Peace is about to come to a close, there's something that I can continue to do with you over the summer. And, that's only if you would like me to, like maybe every other Sunday, or maybe, if not every other Sunday, once a month I can come on and I can continue to do some work with you all, those who like to log on with me at 7:30, so we can continue this journey together, because there's a lot, I think, that needs to be discovered as we continue to grow. And whether we enjoy the Bible, whether we enjoy faith, whether we enjoy religion, whether we enjoy love, whether we enjoy God, believe in God or not, I believe that there's still some things that we can continue to do together. So I'm going to, just ask, for those people who do follow me, usually you follow me on Facebook. So let me know if you'd like for me to do a bi-weekly thing, or maybe just a once a month thing over the summer. We can just check in, keep it moving. But today, and I'll tell you why I think it's important for us to continue to do it. In some ways, I'm thinking truistically, because I'm thinking in some ways like about myself, so I can keep this going, but also altruistically, like for people who really like to chime in and hear a word. I want to be able to be available and to do that. So today, what we're going to do for the next 25 minutes is I'm going to really kind of go over something that came up last week as I was watching Andy Stanley, which for me affirmed what I'm doing at Peace Church. And so like I said, his series is called The Bible Told Me So. And what I really enjoy is that what he's really dealing with is how people leave religion as they get older, how people kind of check out of religion as they get older. And that's why I said I would like to really kind of continue this maybe throughout the summer, because there are different reasons maybe why people, leave, why people kind of take hold to something and then let it go. And so what I'll do is I'll make this kind of personal for myself, and then I'll kind of branch this out here again. So I think for like a lot of people, maybe in their community, and I'm going to say in particular in the Black community, if most of us, especially if you're raised in the Bible Belt or raised in the South, or if you came from a family or you were raised somewhere else in the country, but in a family that's from the South, 9 times out of 10, church was probably a part of your upbringing. Okay, it was church, it was the Bible, church, Bible, church. And if you grew, okay, true. All right. And then if you grew up like that, you probably went to church a lot. Like you would go on the Sunday and go all day. It probably felt like all weekend at that. And so you're made and you're forced to go to something. And then you're taught about God from either one lens, and you're taught about God either at that moment in time in a way that, in my opinion, maybe you can somewhat understand it, or in a way you're kind of made or forced to understand it. Then something happens. You grow up, and then for a lot of people who are fortunate enough to go to college in particular, you grow up and you go to college, and then you start seeing different things. Like now you are being exposed, and keep in mind this is before social media, this is before the internet. So then you're exposed to a lot of different ideals, or you're exposed to people who are living different lifestyles than you, who are doing different things, and so you start questioning. Okay, the single lens and then tithing. Oh yeah, see, this is why we want to continue this. This is why we wanted to continue this, because being single and tithing are definitely two of the largest ones. Because really, being tithing, that's really about money, and single usually is about sex. So I'm actually going to talk a little bit about that. And so you see something different, you learn something different, and because you're unable to ask what I like to say factual questions, but you continue to get faith-based answers, it kind of throws you off, and then you just either get tired and go, man, I can't deal with this anymore. You get frustrated, and then people just kind of start jumping ship. But what's so funny is even when they're jumping ship, there's still this tide, this hold, this inertia, this energy that still in some ways holds you to the religion because it's embedded in you now. You've been raised with it. So you're stuck with it. And so you end up fighting against it probably, or just totally disengage. Like I'm not going to church, or I don't believe anymore. Right. So maybe that describes a couple of people. Maybe that describes you, minus a few or a bunch of details, but I'm just saying in all. Me, on the other hand, I started losing. For me, I lost my faith when I was 14. So I lost mine when I was a kid, when I was still living at home, and it happened when my grandmother passed away. And so with her dying, that really challenged my understanding of faith, because I didn't get how prayer, I was told if I prayed, she'd stay alive. I didn't understand how, if what I wanted, they say, ask God for what you want, and and then you get it. And so here I am praying for it and wanting it, and what I wanted didn't happen. So I'm a bit of an extremist, and I think that a lot of us are. You believe all the way, and then when one thing challenges it or changes it, it's like you go I went the complete opposite side of the spectrum, and I no longer believe anymore. And so that started an interesting journey for myself, where I was cherry picking things and learning new faiths and studying new faiths and joining new faiths. So I have a very kind of strong worldly view with regard to religion and spirituality anyway, because of some of the experiences that I had. Didn't say it was the most open and worldly view, but I definitely have that because of the different places that I've been and different languages that I delved into and the different belief systems. All right. So now, here go some of the challenges with that. Number one, if you were raised, and I really like the way that Andy Stanley puts it, one of the issues with the way Christianity is taught in particular is that it's only taught either by the Bible, and is only taught usually in church. Okay, it's either taught through the Bible and it's taught through church. And what I really appreciate Andy Stanley for doing, and that's why I said you might want to check him out, because he's doing what I'm talking about doing, like going over some history, breaking down numbers, breaking down dates and different things that happen. And what I like is that he says usually the way it is for most people is Christianity exists because of the Bible. Right? So that's one of the first, I think, misnomers that kind of catches people off guard, is that Christianity exists because of the Bible. But really, it's the other way around. The Bible exists because of Christianity. So there are a number of people who, if I'm not learning about Christianity through the Bible, then they go, it must not be real Christianity. Then you have a number of people also going, well, the only way I know about Christianity is the Bible. So since the Bible doesn't really seem very scientific, if you're like me and you're a scientist, or it doesn't really seem like it coalesces all the way through, the answer is you're right, because the Bible itself was written by a few different people. And like I said, over time, we'll get into that. So I think that's one of the issues, is that because people have only been taught it from one way, okay, then that's one of the, so then I think that's a major struggle. And especially when you get to a point in your life where you're thinking on your own and you're figuring things out, and you're seeing that 1 + 1 = 3, and you're like, no, it doesn't, it equals 2. So conflicts start happening. Okay. So that's the Bible part. The next thing is the church part. If you look at, if you study the Bible even from like 30 AD to like 70 AD, 30 AD is really when what Jesus was doing got captured, including the death and resurrection. So let me just kind of do that real quick. He dies at 33, resurrects at 33. But let's go ahead and own something that some of that history could be off between maybe 3 or 4 years. Okay, so I would say 33 AD, but really it's probably 30 AD. And so here Jesus dies and then is resurrected. And then after Jesus dies, the first church is actually established like around 2 years after that. Okay, so when we go from John to Acts, so it's about 2 years after that. And then you have a number of different things that happen basically between like 32, 33 AD and like 70 AD. Okay, and what is really interesting to keep in mind is that around that time, what they knew about Jesus was really more so a legend. It takes about 70 years for a legend to become history. Okay, so you have people who say, I saw Jesus, Jesus is alive, I saw him. And then you have other people who don't believe or who don't want to believe. And so remember, you also had other gods that were in existence at that time. So between 70 to 312 AD, you don't really have a big uprising of Christianity. And when you really started seeing the presence, it's really like 310, around 312 AD. And that's when Constantinople came in, and all of this is like after what we know as the Roman after the Roman Empire, things start falling, things start changing. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause right there with the history lesson and say, so one of the issues that's hard for a lot of us is if you are factual people and you only get faith-based answers, that can mess with you. That's the reason why for me, it's a little bit easier or a lot easier for me to practice the faith that I have, because when I came to my faith later in life. I came back to it later in life. I came back to it like in my mid-20s, and I came back to it on my own. I didn't come back to it because somebody made me do it or because someone forced me to do it. I came back to it on my own. So since I came back on my own, that meant that I was studying things on my own, and first for me, I'm very thankful of the way that I did it, because even then, in a lot of ways, some of the factors of being solo or being isolated or even being single can lead to people still leaving because it's just you, or at least that's what it feels like. So for me, coming back to Christianity as an adult on my own accord, I was a little bit more open because I was exploring it for myself. I will admit there are some aspects of it you have to believe, like you have to believe, like I can't prove someone's resurrection. I can't prove, right, exactly. I can't prove holes in the hands of a savior. I can't, like there are a number of things I can't prove because I wasn't there. And I think for a number of people, that's very hard because they're like, well, then if I can't prove it, then I probably don't want to believe it. And what I want to do is I don't even want to try to use that to throw shade or to pick on people. What I want to say is I completely understand that. But what I also want to say is that there are a number of things in all of our lives that we'll never know the beginning and the ending of it, and we still take a chance, especially if we want it bad enough, like even being in a relationship. You can be in a relationship with somebody 10, 20 years. You can even be married to someone and you still won't know everything, So it's highly interesting that certain things we'll go all in on and some other things we won't, and and what I'm saying is that that's human nature. Like I think that's how we are. But what I find really a lovely thing is the more doubtful we are about something, in my opinion, is the more that we should either look into it or make a declaration or a decree that I'm going to walk away from it. And so for me, because I am a very curious person, just like the disciple Thomas in the Bible, I kept digging on my own, but I also kept digging and using my faith at the same time. So let me explain what I mean when I say I kept digging but using my faith at the same time. I would read the Bible and I would notice some things that I'm like that I would have questions about, right? Then what I realized is a lot of times what I had questions about were not really questions about things I had in the Bible. It was questions about things that were conflicting with my view of church and that were conflicting with my understanding of history. Like I had a question, like I would think about how my people, I'll say black people, or at least in this country, so African Americans, still black, learned about Christianity. And so as a youth, I would think it was all through slavery. Like we learned about Christianity through slaveries, And then I love how the first time I went to Africa, and come to find out that Christianity was not a slave religion. Now, the way that we understand it and started to practice it came out of slavery, but our ancestors knew about Jesus before they came over on the boat. So that right there cleared up a lot of things for me right there. That, okay, Christianity wasn't a slave religion. And that's a challenge for a lot of people. A lot of folks, especially those who like to study history and who like to study especially American history, and even those who, I guess, look at, look at different factors and different pieces of history around antebellum South, like a lot of people really would see a correlation between Christianity, church, slavery, and then that's how we caught on. So hence, as I said, if your only reference to your faith is the Bible, especially if you are a Christian and you have questions, I totally understand why you would have questions. Like it totally makes sense. If your only reference you have about Christianity is church, then I totally understand here again why you would have questions. There are some people who don't have questions at all. And those people, I want to say, in some ways, I want to like kind of tip my hat to them out of respect and say, God bless you. And then some of us would probably say, man, I wish I could be more like that. But the truth is that there are some people who just accept what they have seen in church and in the Bible. And if they just accepted it, I promise you, there's still some gaps to them as well. They may not display it. They may not even say it. Some of them won't even want to own it. But there's some gaps to them as well because they haven't learned a lot about the Bible per se, because they went to seminary and learned, and they only learn from people who believe as they believe. It's a lot more, that they're leaving out. And so that's one of the reasons why I love being a diversity professional, because when you can learn things from various perspectives and sometimes even opposing perspectives, it can still help you out with understanding your belief and what you think and what you see. So with these last 10 minutes, I'll kind of go first. I think what I'll do is I'll speak about some things spiritually. And then if I have time, go into thinking about or speaking about things, I guess, literally or figuratively. I said the seed in me holds on to the good parts. Once you read and learn, you can't go back. It's hard. Yeah, it really is hard. So I'll speak first. Let me talk like out of faith. Okay. Which I really believe is probably the hard thing for most STEM people, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, or maybe even STEAM, if I put arts or agriculture in there. It's probably hard for people who traveled around the world to understand. But that's why I said some things you do have to believe. But I'm not saying that to excuse not answering a question. I'm saying that there are some things that your experience teaches you. Like there's a part in the Bible where, as a matter of fact, it's in 1 Samuel, I believe. So, and Hannah she was a woman in the Bible who had a son, and she gave her son back to God. Hence Samuel became a prophet. And he was studying under Elisha or Elijah. Keep on, I'm speaking off of the top of my head, so the stories, may be a little off, but you can look it up in 1 Samuel. Basically, you'll be looking up, the man who heard from God, and he heard from God 3 times. Each time he heard, he would go to his teacher, his master, and go, "Master, I hear you calling my name." And he was like, "I didn't call you, go back and rest." And then after the 3rd time, it was like, okay, maybe that's God talking to you. So instead of coming to me, continue to communicate with who you think that you were hearing. And so what was happening is he was hearing from God, right? Now, I want you to notice something. The way that story goes, if you really think about it, the teacher, the master, didn't tell him how to hear from God. He just said, next time you hear something, respond to it, right? So there are a number of people out here in the world, if you're like me and you like facts, you want to know 100% what to do. Like, tell me what to do so that I can do it and see the results or at least see some of what you're trying to tell me. And the thing that I want to say is, in some ways, that's a dangerous way to operate, especially if someone says, like, I can prove something, or yeah, I can, if you do it my way, things are going to work. I say it's dangerous because that's really not usually the case. I'm not one who likes to even tell people how to hear from God, because I know what works for me, or what has happened in my life doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the same, and you're going to have the same indicators or the same signals or signs in your life, because we're all different and we all come at things from a different way. Like, some people may believe that they hear from God when they're working out, swimming, or some people say they hear from God when they're meditating or sitting still. Some people can even hear from God in the midst of a lot of noise, or maybe be alone in a crowd, right? Or they may be alone in a group, they came to the group and then they receive things. Now, for some people, they may be able to be patient and say, okay, I think I can understand that. Let me try to test that. For other people, they may be completely frustrated because they're like, you haven't told me anything. You need to share, you need to tell me more. And what I can say is, from a spiritual perspective, because my faith has been challenged in my life, whether it be through health, me being in a hospital 2 years ago and having to have 2 surgeries, whether it be in life, me not having any money and not knowing how something is going to get fixed or something's going to be changed. And then the more that I believe things do change and things start to happen, there are times when struggles may have been going on in my life, or maybe even actually victories, and I'm praying for something. And as I'm praying, something happens. And so my faith gets affirmed in the way that I'm living. Okay, but the problem comes when you try to talk to people from your perspective and tell them that that's the way it is and that's how it should be. And a thinker is not going to hear that and move with that. A thinker is going to be like, man, you have to tell me more than that, or woman, you have to show me more or tell me more than that. And here's the funny part. They should believe like that. They should behave that way because they haven't seen anything. You haven't really told them anything. As a matter of fact, I have a colleague who helps me out at Peace Church, and we were talking about the series and, the series about college students that follow Jesus. And one of the things that she wanted to say in the sermon she did last week was telling students to pray, and you got to pray it out and you got to pray about it. And I was like, these are college students. They're not going to understand what that means. You can't tell them to pray. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you got to explain to them a little bit more, like, yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, what you hear is important, and for some people it can look like mental illness. And for some people it can be mental illness, And so we actually sat there and talked it out. Like, I was like, okay, what's the point of what you're trying to explain to the students? And the more she talked it out, I was like, okay, that's how you want to talk to the students then. Explain to them about the stage of life that they're at. Explain to them like what they're seeing and give them some ideas of what it may or may not be. And then walk them through, if you want to hear from God, if you want to do something a certain way, walk them through and explain it to them. Like, don't leave them hanging by just kind of speaking symbolically to them, and so that's why I'm happy to tell people my process and what I did. But as a scientist, I can also use terminology like, maybe during this time in my life when I was stressed out, my amygdala was doing something, so it's sending, like serotonin to my body, which is causing me to be more stressed. I believe that's the right hormone for that, versus using my frontal lobe, my frontal cortex. And if I'm thinking with that part of my brain, it releases oxytocin. So it makes me feel good. I feel euphoric or high, and what's so interesting is that even thinking like that and talking about parts of the brain is very important, because like when you try to describe spirit and soul to some people, and feeling good and feeling bad and stress and feeling free, the brain is a very big part of that. So now let me just kind of hit pause real quick, because it may seem like, Thomas, you're going everywhere. Like, man, you're talking about a lot. And what I'm saying is that if you only study your faith from one lens, I'm not telling you that you're wrong. I'm saying that if that's what you do and if that's what you're satisfied with, I say you're good. Okay, you're good. I will still say that there's a lot more for you to learn in that and for you to get, and there's a lot more for you to use. But I don't want to tell you that you're wrong, because if that's what works for you, then that's what works for you. If you're another person who goes, I want to believe, but there's just not enough there for me to believe. It's kind of like one of my new favorite comedians, Gerard Carmichael. He talks about climate change, and he has a joke. He was like, the impact is not dire enough for me to give a what about it. Like, I'm going to be fine. My kids are going to be fine. So for some people, if it doesn't align with where they are, if it doesn't seem like there's enough evidence, then they may struggle. Guess what? I totally understand that. The thing that I think is so important to understand about faith, first, that's why I said, let me talk about faith like on a spiritual stance, is this is a practice. That's the first thing. This is a practice. This is not something that everyone can fully say is foolproof. So let me say that right there. So if you meet someone and they say, I can tell you foolproof, if you do this, this is going to happen. If you believe this, this is where you're going to be. Because no one has died to come back, or at least in our time, no one has died to come back. That's why it's called faith. They can't prove it. And if you're having that discussion with someone who needs that kind of proof, I'm going to say not to avoid it, like don't do it, don't entertain or anything like that, because I don't like to ignore people anyway. But I say don't get stuck in that kind of a discussion or in that kind of argument, because it's an argument in a lot of ways it goes nowhere. Because people are trying to be proven something and they want to be proven right. And if you want to be proven right, you're already shut down to really listening and learning something, because you're kind of hell-bent on what you want anyway, right? So what I'm saying is that when you have your experience with what you've been through and how you've gotten to this point in your faith, then you hold on to that, because that's your story. Okay, that belongs to you. Maybe that's just for you, but that belongs to you. And like the Erik Erikson's model of social identity development, you don't let anyone take something away from you that you've redefined and internalized for yourself, because it makes sense to you. Just don't go out and try to put it on other people. Because it makes sense to you doesn't mean that other people are going to gravitate towards it and that is going to coalesce with them. The next thing is, when we talk about spirit and faith versus something that's factual and tangible, like I said, it's about a belief. And the more you practice it and the more you do it, I will admit sometimes the more it makes sense to you, the more you do it. Well, thank you. I'm glad to be a bridge over that chasm, but the more you do it, the more it will make sense to you. The question is, can you explain that to somebody else? And some people can't explain that to somebody else, and some people are great at it. But keep in mind, even when you explain it, there's still more that can be told, which is why, like in this session right here, I wanted to talk a little bit about the history. That's why I took you back 30, 70, 310, 312 AD. That's the reason why when you talk about faith, usually it's best to talk about it in multiple ways. So don't just talk about it in faith, talk about it historically, talk about it literally, talk about it civically, talk about it socially, talk about it politically, because your faith really permeates, if you're like me. I'm going to say, if you're like me, my faith is the center of everything that I do. Even as a diversity professional, my faith is the center of everything that I do. I practice a religion that can be taught as a dominant identity versus marginalized identities. But for me, why I do what I do is really because of my faith. Because, as was said earlier, by one of the people watching, it was the love of Jesus that kept me. It was the love of Jesus that held me and what kept me here. And the more that I've rested in that, the more I was able to see a lot of what's happening in the Bible and see it come alive. See what was happening then, how we can still play out now, whether it's literally or whether it's figuratively. So that's why I talk about the Bible a lot of times as a reference book, as well as a history book, and then as well as a guide, because it's all of those. Okay. And so I see that we're at 8:01. And so here's what I want to do is I'm going to leave you with a couple of questions. Okay. I'm going to leave you with a couple of questions, and you can just use these for yourself. Really, one of them I got from Andy Stanley last week, which is the one that I'm going to open with. But it was funny because that's what I was going to do this Sunday anyway. So the first question is, what happens when you outgrow your childhood God? What happens when you outgrow your childhood God? And for a number of us, that's what happened. We outgrew our childhood God, which really means you outgrew what you learned in your childhood. What you learned as an adult doesn't align with what you learned as a child. Okay. The second question, I said I'm only going to ask you three. The second question is, what happens when you have factual questions, but you get faith-based answers? What happens when you have factual questions, but you get faith-based answers? Like, I can ask a question about how to cure this headache, and then when someone says, pray the headache away, and you go, well, I could just take that aspirin there without praying, and that may help regulate my blood pressure, which will help to alleviate my headache. But for some people, you know what I'm saying? You can poo-poo it off, my good. See? Hey, but for some people, prayer is what it takes. And then the last question I'll go is, what do I do when what happens in my professional adult life doesn't align with my young understanding of what should be happening in my life? And those three questions probably are the epicenter of why a lot of people who came up in Christianity in particular left, when they didn't get an answer to that. You see what I'm saying? Like when no one dealt with that. And that's the reason why I said the three things that people usually kind of get stuck on with regard to religion is usually time, sex, and money. Okay, which ends up going to tithing about money, tithing and offering in church. Sex deals with being single and relationships, and then time is about selfishness and where I go. Am I doing God's work? Am I doing what I want to do? And those three things seem to really kind of be at the epicenter of a lot of our confusion with regard to religion and practicing faith. And so as I close this out, because I'm over my 1 minute, for me, my faith is very central to what I do. Is the core of what I do. And I'm still learning myself. So I don't want to come off and make it sound like I got this whole thing all figured out, because if I did, I would be lying to you. But what I will say is that my faith is what has kept me in the midst of a lot of challenges in my life. But my faith has it's shown itself in different ways. It hasn't been an invisible thing for me. It's been a very visible thing. It's been something that I've been able to see happen. It's something I've been able to witness the impact and witness the change. And it's because of my belief, but it was also because of my action. It's because of my prayer. And then the deeper you practice and put your faith into practice or put it into action, in my opinion, the more you'll start to see things about the world, the more your lens will start to change. Which is why, in my opinion, when your lens changes, your language hopefully will change too. And I can honestly say that that's what's been happening with me. As my lens changes, my language changes. So I don't use the same cliche terminology about faith and the Bible. Like, I don't just say pray it out. I believe in prayer. Oh, I do. But I don't just say pray it out. I'll add some more to it. Matter of fact, I may not even tell you to pray. I may tell you to actually go and do something. If it's something about money, I may not say, tithe in church and get a church. Matter of fact, I don't say that. I won't tell you that, but I will talk about maybe the impact of money in your life or how you value or feel about money, So as I continue to grow, my terminology, my vernacular grows and changes with me. And maybe one of the rub for a lot of us, the cognitive dissonance that happens with people, is when new experiences happen, but it's battling against your old or your young self. And you're trying to rectify that. So you're not crazy if that's what you're doing. You're not wrong if that's what you're doing. You're not off. There just may need to be more information provided, more education given, more studying. And I'm not saying that to insult and say you need to do more. I mean, because even with that, we want to do it, but do it with an open mind and do it in a safe and in a peaceful way, so that you're able to receive things in a way that doesn't lead to confusion, but hopefully that leads to either liberation and more help, that's it. See, so my faith has evolved so much in my life and continues to do so. Constant learning. That's the thing. Constantly learning. And today in church, what we're going to be doing is looking at John 14. So from a spiritual perspective, we will answer some of those questions, but from John 14. So from a biblical perspective, at Peace Church, I really feel like it's really good to talk to them from life as well as from the Bible. So because life is going to teach you some things just like the Bible will. And then when you get out of Peace Church and you start becoming more and more adult and more experiences, we can start to talk about it more from other sources of history, maybe even other sources of faith. But for right now, we keep it simple, with that. And so if you have any questions for me, any ideas, you can email me at thomasreasley@easlybranch.com. And it's EASLEY. If you don't have any other questions, please take this. I'll probably download this and put it up like on a YouTube or something like that, so you can refer back to it if you like. If you'd like for me to do that, let me know. And like I said, let's continue this if you like over the summer, since my church season is coming to but my engagement, my interacting doesn't have to stop. It can continue. So thank you for logging on. Thank you for listening. I hope you got something from this today. I hope I didn't help you develop more confusion. I hope I at least help you feel a little bit more comfortable with where you are and who you are at this moment in your life, especially. Okay, so looking for, so we'll do that. What if we do maybe twice a month? So maybe we can do like twice in May, twice June, twice in July, so we can check in. So maybe I can start with that first, maybe first and third. Okay, all right. So we can start with that, and what we'll do is we'll just continue from that point on. But if you have any questions about anything that I'm saying, and if you have other people who you think would probably like this, send it to them, share it with them. I love to engage, and I love to, as you said, Miss Sanders, to constantly learn. And let's just continue to constantly learn together and have a good time, and let's do our best to enjoy this life that we have. At least in my understanding, this is the one life to live, so let's try to enjoy it, okay? Y'all go enjoy your Sunday. I got to get ready for church. All right. Peace.